And this is Changing the Narrative. I'm your host, David Rives, and we are changing the narrative every week. On this podcast, we're discussing things that are not often discussed within the scientific realm, within the historical realm, but also we're trying to encourage other Christians because we've been spoon-fed a narrative from the atheistic community that there is no God, that you don't have to worry about a thing. There's no absolute morality. Just do what you want. Everything will all work out. And that's been pushed on us for generation after generation, but here we are changing the narrative back to truth, the truth of God's Word. And today I have a friend, John May, with me here. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It is great to have you in studio, and you've brought a friend with you.
This is my 6-year-old Burmese python. His name is Bowser.
Bowser.
Named off of Mario Kart. Yeah, I had him since he's a hatchling.
That's wonderful. So 6 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You hand-raised him from that time, basically.
Yes, sir. I got him when he was about 2 months old.
How about that?
Yeah, it's amazing how fast, you go from feeding every week to bigger meals to a lot slower feeding schedules. And
so how often do you have to feed him?
well, as a baby, it was a rat like once a week.
Yeah.
Now it's a rabbit like once a month.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they have really slow metabolisms,
Right.
so they don't break down, so it lasts a lot longer.
Yeah.
We do have bigger snakes that eat a lot bigger meals. That's an interesting, when you start looking for the bigger animals to feed, it's, you get looked at a little weirdly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Now, live rabbits or frozen rabbits, or what do you do?
he will eat a pre-killed.
Okay.
But I do have a reticulated python that won't touch it unless it's moving.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Just won't go for it.
She won't even consider that it's there. It has to be making noises, and the whole house has to leave because it's just not okay.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Now, okay, let's back up a little bit. Tell me a little bit about your history. Have you always been a Christian, been into animals? Tell me your story.
So I got saved later in life, about 10, 12 years ago.
Okay.
I was never allowed to have reptiles.
Okay.
I was allowed to play with them, outside, little snakes.
Yeah.
And me and my wife met, was never allowed to have them either.
Uh-huh.
We started having kids, and I don't like to break promises to my kids. We was at an exotic pet store, and I was looking at ball pythons, and my oldest, which was my first one, and the youngest first one, she was looking. I was like, I promise you, if you hold that the whole time we're here, I'll buy it for you.
Ooh.
Of course, my wife's in the background going, yeah, we'll do that, because at the time she was real dressed, didn't really get her hands dirty.
Uh-huh.
And my wife's like, yeah, we'll do that, and she's okay. And then we held it, and after that, it grew.
Right. It's like, so now what are we going to do? I guess we have to get this thing.
Right.
And the ball pythons are very
Amazing.
handleable, very beautiful. I mean, that's probably one of my favorite snakes.
Really.
Yeah.
I started off liking balls. I still do. We have a few, but I got where I like the bigger guys.
Yeah. Now, you use these larger snakes for shows, to take around for children to encounter. Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, so I wanted more.
Okay.
And I have 1,000,001 hobbies, so my wife said, unless they can pay for themselves, and you can handle it, then let's go. So I was like, I started at the time after getting saved. A few months later, we started doing popcorn preaching at our church.
Okay.
I don't know if you know what that is, but it's like 5 minutes.
Uh-huh.
I almost passed out. So I was like, you know what? I can use. Started a small company called Super Serpents at the time.
Okay.
I used that to get you over public speaking.
Yes.
And then it also paid for more animals.
Uh-huh.
So we started there, and then we started doing schools. We started working with all types of kids and ages. And we moved up to a store a couple years later, and I got to the point where I couldn't justify selling animals to people that really didn't need them.
Right.
To make a living, because I went full time doing that, and I wasn't happy. I was more happy doing the shows.
Yeah.
But I wanted to find a way to bring the gospel using my animals through Noah's Ark.
Okay.
And you get kind of looked weird when you say that, because people, they look at the snake as this evil being.
Right.
And so started working on it, and we eventually moved it to the Ark Adventures.
Okay.
We went to Kentucky to the Ark Encounter.
Yes.
And it opened a lot of doors. I've never seen how to display an animal that way. And we started, and now we've been to Tennessee to do shows. This is his second time in Tennessee doing a show.
How about that?
We do schools, assisted living.
Okay.
And you'd think assisted living, they'd be scared in the corner, but they're the most open.
Is that right?
Oh, it's amazing. I don't know if it's a lack of they feel rejected maybe a little bit because they're there.
Right.
But you go there, they'll play with any animal I'll bring.
How about that?
Oh, we had a miniature horse there 2 months ago. That was amazing.
A miniature horse inside there.
Oh, walking it through. Yeah.
Well, okay, so, but also there's this curiosity and there's this want for education about different creatures. Mm-hmm. And you're providing that with Ark Adventures.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you'll bring snakes. You mentioned a miniature horse. What other types of animals do you try to focus on?
We also have, the miniature horse isn't mine, but it's a friend of mine. We have monitors.
Okay.
We'll have all different types of, boas, sand boas. We try to make it as more not just about reptiles.
Right.
I like to focus on that one point.
Yeah.
But we'll have goats. We have just bring everything kind of like the Ark would have. And now I focus it more on bringing kids. I was a bus captain for about 4 years, I believe.
Okay.
And I'm no longer able. The bouncing the bus really gets to me.
Yeah.
So as I get older.
Yeah.
But we're trying to use it to bring kids into church by using the story of Noah.
Okay.
Have their minds, bring them with animals, and then they want to go and hopefully follow us to church.
Oh, tell me a little bit more about that. Okay, so you're using Noah's Ark,
yes, sir,
to kind of intrigue and get the conversations going. How does that work?
So we come in, basically start off with I say there's the 4 P's of Noah.
Okay.
So it starts off, Noah was the just man of the world. Mm-hmm. That's what allowed him to build the ark. So basically, personal.
That personal relationship.
Thank you. Yeah. Personal relationship with God. So, in explaining that, and I go, well, I can't put these animals down for a week or two,
right,
or a month, and expect them to have this demeanor unless I have that relationship.
Wow.
With them. So I have to work with them and know them.
Yes.
To know that. Because there's some days he doesn't want to be messed with.
Yeah.
I can't take him to every show.
But because you have that relationship, you're always with him. You're always holding him, making him comfortable with the situation and all of that.
Yes, sir.
Then you're able to work with him.
Right.
Okay.
And mold around him and help him go.
I like that.
Yeah, and then the second P would be he had a purpose.
Okay.
Well, snakes have a purpose to help keep down the rodent. I don't know if you ever bred rats or been around that. Yeah. It gets ridiculously fast. If we didn't have snakes to bring that down, all the amounts of rats and rodents we have, and these bigger guys eating bigger things than where they're from, we'd be overpopulated in a heartbeat.
We were just I did a podcast with our mutual friend Micah Bowman.
Yes, sir.
Looking at God's environmental cleanup systems, right? And there are all of these things that some people say, why do we need spiders? Spiders are eating tons of insects. Well, why would God create snakes? Snakes are actually controlling the rodent population. Well, why would we need this? Why would we need that? And there's always an answer to why are they here? They're here for the good of the entirety of the environment.
Exactly.
And we kind of miss that a lot of times.
Yes, sir. And then, so the purpose of Noah was to build the ark. And then
why was he there?
Right.
He was there in that point of history because God knew he would be faithful. He was a righteous man who would actually do what God told him to do, and that was build an ark. And because he built an ark, he was saved. Because he obeyed, he was among this chosen few who actually listened to God and was saved from destruction.
Exactly. And then that's where we go over. And then the third one was protection, which was the ark. And that's when I usually have like a little tortoise, located tortoise, or a turtle of some kind. Well, they have the hard shell. You know, God made them that have this protection in the wild, so they're, you know, something can't just come up and start biting on them and eat them. Yeah. And our protection is like Noah, he was saved. We get saved. We have the protection of God because we're saved. We're not going to suffer the death of hell that we deserve. And so we go over that. Then we go with the promise, which is the rainbow, where God's promise, you know, that's never going to happen again. Yeah. And I always wind up trying to end and starting to focus more at the end of the show is, well, if God gave us demeanor over these animals, us to protect them and watch over them and raise them and make sure they're healthy, why don't we give that to God in our life? Like, if we have that demeanor, God should have that demeanor in our life. So, and then we usually go show everybody all the animals. We'll bring some that can't be really handled. Like a tarantula. I usually have like pink-toed tarantulas, or
I have seen one of those before.
Oh, they're awesome. They're really great starters because they don't react. They jump far. That's the big problem with them. Okay. Because in Africa, they jump from branch to branch. And then we usually are used to have a dwarf caiman with us.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah. Nice. I love working with those things. Yeah. And we'll have... We've never got to use it. We didn't have it long enough to do it with, but we have had monkeys. Really? Spider monkeys.
Oh, beautiful.
Oh, they're great animals.
Okay. So do you breed snakes?
I was breeding reticulated pythons. Okay. We actually lost one of our big breeders.
I got you.
And I was really close to her, so I'm kind of backing off, not focusing on breeding anymore.
I got you.
But it's not. There's a million breeders, so
absolutely.
I wanted to focus more on this, so I'm more worried about getting different species of animals now.
Yes, that can tell a message.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's back up to protection for a second. You mentioned the turtle. A turtle can draw up into its shell, yes, obviously, and in doing so, it can be safe from the elements. Noah and his family entered into the ark. God commanded him to do that, and because of that, he was safe from those elements, from the destruction that was going on all around him. But are we willing to do those same things? Are we willing to actually listen to what God's saying and follow those instructions? And because of that, we can be safe. Not just in this life, but we're talking about for eternal life. Yep. And this is something as simple as believing and receiving. This is something that anybody can do. It's a free gift.
Yes, sir.
If only we're willing to.
Yes, sir.
So what about receptiveness? When you go out and you bring these animals, do you see like a kid's eye being opened right there on the spot where you see something clicking?
Oh yeah, and you have some people like, I'm not holding that. I mean, you get that in every crowd. You shouldn't have that. Blah blah blah. At the end of every party, God's allowed me to have the comfortability with them that they wind up holding it. You know, all the ones. It might be for 2 seconds to take a picture and done.
Right, but still
have that openness at the end of the deal. We're actually, you know, coming from a church that didn't really perceive to have snakes, you know? Yeah. We actually confronted our pastor about having like a Noah's Ark Day, and we're putting that together now to kind of show it to him. So hoping he'll use it to have like to bring draw kids in that for that week, or like we did when we had buses.
That would be fantastic.
Oh, I think it's awesome. It's amazing what. You know, I heard my pastor preach when I first got saved, and I was very new to it. Like, if it's the right question, God will answer and let you have what you want. Yeah. And this is proof. Like, I never thought I'd ever get to work with reptiles, neither less get to use it in a church setting at that. Right. So it's just amazing how God can, can do anything.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so maybe let's dispel a notion right now, because a lot of people, when they think snakes in churches, they're like, oh my goodness, you're handling snakes in churches and all of this. It's like, is this a test to see who's going to be bit and who God's going to say?
Oh, well.
This is about education.
Right.
What you're doing is about education, but yet you're also able to share the gospel through that education. And maybe open up people's receptiveness to the God's amazing creatures at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, they're perfectly made, like we said earlier, for a job.
Yeah.
To sit there and say, well, that one's just cursed and you can't mess with it, it's not true. So
how do you get around that? How do you get it? Because people say, well, the snake's like the devil from the very beginning. How do you get around that when somebody says, the serpent is Satan?
Oh, it's I kind of look at it, the money is root of all evil. It's not. It's the way you handle it, and it's the same thing. I mean, this could be an evil thing if I allow it. Go bite a random kid. Like I said, have that personal relationship, but didn't know how if it's in a bad mood or if he doesn't want to be messed with that day.
Yeah.
It can turn bad,
Sure.
and look that way.
Yeah.
But if you just got to work towards it. You can't just sit there and go, it's just evil, and it's not true.
Yeah. Well, what I've found is that creatures are this major way that we can actually connect with people. If anybody's ever seen on TV, a documentary about different animals or all of that, they're intrigued. They want to learn. Sometimes it's disgusting when one animal eats another animal or something horrible happens. But oftentimes in those nature documentaries, that's all that happens. It's all about killing. It's all they're trying to go for shock value because they know that's going to keep people tuned in and like gasping all the time, right? But then when you start to look at the design of the creatures, at the incredible nature of these different animals and how they point to a designer, that's where I get excited. And that's where you can use that as a witness. Because so many times we've been told, this world happened by chance. But then you turn that around and you say, well, look at the design of this particular snake. Well, design implies a designer. Creation means there must be a creator. And when we start to look at who the creator is, that's where we're faced with a couple of different options. Because a creator could be anything. It could be, some random pagan god out there. But then there is the God of the Bible who has given us this historical record, his word. And it tells us how he created all of these different creatures. He created them lovingly with all of these characteristics, the creeping things to creep, the flying things to fly. And he filled the earth with them. And then he gave them a commission. It's like, go out and you fill the earth. You keep this process going. And all of the animals have continued this process since creation. So when we see these different animals and we can point back to God's original intent, that's great. But then we do see that there's a lot of killing. There's a lot of survival of the fittest. When people think evolution, they're always like, well, survival of the fittest. And I'm like, yeah, the fittest thing is always going to survive. The fastest impala is going to get away from that lion. It's like, that's just a fact of nature. But from the very beginning, it wasn't so. All animals and humans live together peacefully. It's because of our sin. It's because we mess up that this world is the way it is, that creatures are eating other creatures, that snakes occasionally do bite, that that dogs will bite the hand that feed them occasionally, right? It's because of the curse, it's because of our sin that we live in a less than perfect world. And yet it's still incredible. I mean, look at this. I'm just looking at this snake right now. And I'm like, that is an amazing creature, and this is still an amazing, incredible world.
Oh, yeah.
So tell me a little bit about these snakes in particular and what he is doing with his tongue, because he's almost tasting smelling the air, right?
Right, exactly. He's sniffing out his new area, new smells.
Okay.
That's one way we learn to read them. Most snakes in general, if they're irritated or don't want to be messed with, their tongue don't come all the way out. They kind of just show the tips.
Okay.
As in, all right, it's kind of a warning.
Yes.
First beginning of a warning. The longer the flick, the more comfortable I am messing with them.
Yes.
Because the more relaxed they are and the more brain activity they're showing.
Interesting.
But yeah, he's just smelling out, and he usually sits on top of my head about the end of the day.
I love it.
So, like I said, I grew him since he was as a hatchling. I mean, he was a couple months old, but we've been together for a while.
And of course, we're seeing this in person right now. Those who are listening in their car, I wouldn't suggest that you pull up the video version of this podcast right now, but I would suggest you go back and look at the video version of this podcast. But just being able to see it, I think even the people who are listening can tell there is a very large snake wrapped around your neck right now. He is smelling you. He is just as chill as he can be. Tell me, how often do you get bit by one of the creatures that you have?
I mean, so every snake is a little different.
Okay.
Every species is a little bit more prone to biting.
Yes.
I would say if you would look at a Burmese as a dog,
Yeah.
in relation to a dog, they're more of the Labrador of the
Okay.
snake world. They're more calm and placid. Now, as babies,
Yeah.
they bite.
Okay.
They until you get the used to handling, they bite.
Yeah.
I also deal with reticulated pythons. I've been bit more by those than I have by anything.
Is that right?
Oh yeah, they're very, especially if you touch them around their neck, they don't like it, and they usually will bite a lot more than any other snake that I've ever handled.
Interesting.
Oh yeah, I found a new obsession. My wife's gonna kill me when I say this, but have you ever heard of a horned spider-tail viper?
No.
So it's a viper.
Okay.
It stays on rocks. Micah actually is the one that introduced me to this.
Yeah.
It actually has a tail that looks like a spider, and it moves it, and it's such it was like a spider walking, and
Really?
a bird will come down and try to grab that tail,
And then the snake gets the bird.
bites it.
How about that?
Yeah, perfectly made for his area that he lives in.
Where do they typically hang out?
Don't know.
Okay.
I just now got into them.
Yeah. Do you have one yet?
No,
Not okay.
they're pretty costly.
I understand.
And I'm not allowed to have venomous until I have a hot room. So
Okay.
that's in the future.
What about regulations? Like you're in Texas.
Yes, sir.
What are the regulations for having different types of snakes and creatures and things like that?
Texas is one of those places. I think Florida, you got to have so many hours to own a venomous.
Okay.
Training and all that.
Yeah.
Texas, you just go buy the permit for $20 and it's
Is that
yours.
right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Even these guys, I think it's $60 for me to be like a seller for them.
Yeah.
Or to have them all in one big bundle.
Uh-huh.
So, and that's what we do. And it's not even this guy. I'm not for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't think Burmese are even one of the ones that have to be permitted. It's just the reticulated pythons.
How about that?
We've had green anacondas for a couple of years.
Wow.
That's a fun one to work with.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so what's the largest snake that you've ever worked with?
So I have she passed away recently on me, 20-foot, almost 200-pound reticulated python that was solid black.
Oh,
and you get her out in the sun, the iridescence was beautiful.
Uh-huh.
After that, that's when I decided, all right, no more breeding these.
Yeah.
It just kind of knocked me back a little bit.
Yep.
But he'll stay around because he's not that big.
Yeah.
Compared to most snakes that we have.
Yeah.
But
How long do they live?
Burmese pythons in general, they're about 20 to 25 years.
Wow.
Right.
So that's a long term. Again, that's something you have to be careful about because a lot of people say, "Oh, I want a snake as a pet or whatever," and then I want a pet, and so they get something and they don't realize the long term commitment. This is something that you're going to be caring for a very long time.
Yes, sir.
So you raise awareness for that as
Right.
well.
When most of when we had the store, we had like a little class you could do to teach you how to handle septic caging, and that's one thing we stress. This is you're going to be in college before this thing gets ready to pass away.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that did set me back more in the whole owning a store, an exotic store. How many people just dropped off?
Uh-huh.
When the day we shut our doors as a store, we had, I think, 4 ball pythons dropped off.
Oh my goodness.
That day. I'm like, yeah, and I was like, I can't do this.
No, so we're here in studio, but we're also in studio at the Wonder Center and Science Museum just outside of Nashville, Tennessee. There are exhibit halls literally right out our door. Over 100,000 square feet of museum here. But in the Wonders of Zoology, that exhibit hall, we have multiple creatures, including geckos, bearded dragons, etc. But those geckos, they're all rescues. Because even geckos, people say, oh, I want something, and then they realize this is not something I can really take care of.
Exactly.
And so I always encourage people,
research.
like, be sure.
Yep.
Be sure. This is a long-term investment, just like a dog. It's like you don't want something that you're going to get tired of, and then somebody else has to deal with that.
And a lot of times they have a bad experience because you ain't handled it.
Yep.
And they're getting bit and
yep.
Not used to being, they don't want that snake or animal not being used to being touched.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so in 30 seconds, kind of pull it all together. How do you use this to proclaim the gospel?
Just like start off with Noah's Ark, bring the animals out, teach them the 4 Ps, and if not, we always ask. Anybody's not saved, you got questions, you can ask us. We try to send them back to our church.
That's great. That's great. Just like that turtle can retract in its shell for protection, just like Noah went in the ark and there was only one door of the ark. Mm-hmm. Well, Jesus said, I am the door, and he's there. He's always waiting on us, and that is such an incredible way to use your talents with animals to share the gospel with others. Thank you for what you do. And
thanks for having me. This is awesome.
I can't wait we are going to, everybody listening right now, be sure to keep up with this, because we're going to actually pull John in the studio in a few moments, in the TV studio, and we're going to do some up close with a lot of different animals. Thanks for joining me today, and thank you for joining me on Changing the Narrative. I'm David Rives, and until our next program, I want to remind you to keep looking up, because truly, the heavens declare the glory of God. Find us on all social platforms to stay informed. Watch Genesis Science Network 24/7 for free on Roku, Fire TV, and on our website. Visit the world's largest origins-based store, creationsuperstore.com. Plan your trip to the Wonders Center and Science Museum just outside of Nashville, Tennessee. Donate to our nonprofit ministry to help us continue sharing truth.